A very warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Within the Frame. I'm Han Da-eun. Leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China gathered in Seoul today, resuming the Trilateral summit among the three nations that have been stalled for more than 4 years. The summit came amid the Yoon administration's strong push to mend South Korea's strained relations with both Japan and China amid growing regional divide. The three nations agreed to work closely together for regional peace and co-prosperity, but showed differences in contentious issues such as the denuclearization of North Korea. What are the key takeaways from the summit, and what are the prospects for the three Asian neighbors' future relations? For some clues, we turn to Lim Eun-jung, Associate Professor of International Studies at Kongju National University. It's great to see you again.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
And for insights from Japan, we also have Walter Sim, Japan correspondent at the Straits Times, joining us from Tokyo. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Professor Lim, let's kick things off with you. What's your overall assessment of the Trilateral Summit?
Well, it was pretty much encouraging for me, who is studying all the international affairs surrounding the region, because these days more and more people are saying with the term of so-called the new Cold War, which is what I don't like, actually, because new Cold War, I don't think that term itself describes very well the reality we encounters, but at the same time, I cannot but admit the reality, which is pretty much competitive and conflictual, even between the regional neighbor. So we do have more like a kind of strengthened cooperation between U.S., of course, and Japan and Korea, whereas we have, on the other hand, we have another like a triangle, which is composed of North Korea, Russia, and China. So we did have some tensions between the two different triangles. But through the restoration of the stalled trilateral dialogues between Korea, Japan, and China, I think that kind of worries, concerns could have been more like I would just say relieved a little bit. So which was pretty much encouraging for a person like me.
And your thoughts are echoed by many experts here in Korea that although sensitive issues were left pretty much undiscussed, the fact that the three leaders got together, resuming the three-way meeting itself, holds huge significance. And Walter, President Yoon, during a joint press conference held after the summit, said that the joint declaration contains the three nations' resolve to closely cooperate for regional peace and co-prosperity. What are the key takeaways from the joint declaration?
Well, I think one noticeable point in their joint declaration was the leaders' pledge to uphold, and I quote, an international order based on the rule of law and international law. But what I felt was essential is that this statement is deliberately left very vague, and the broad statement does not in any way describe this international order as free and open, which is a phrase that is commonly used in Japan's and I believe South Korea's meetings with other countries, especially democracies in the collective West. Tellingly, despite the pledges for regional peace and stability at the Trilateral Summit in Seoul, Beijing has continued to send Coast Guard vessels near the disputed East China Sea islands that Japan controls and calls the Senkakus, which China claims and calls the Diaoyu. Today was actually the 158th consecutive day that Chinese ships have been spotted near these islands, and this is a new record, even as the Trilateral Summit was going on in Seoul. Well, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has also called for the removal of a buoy installed by China within Japan's exclusive economic zone near the region, and the country and Japan and China obviously still remain far apart on this issue. So, while my response has thus far focused largely on Japan and China, but I think as Asia's two largest neighbors and superpowers, they are of course stability between the two countries is highly important for regional peace and prosperity, not to mention issues surrounding North Korea. But I think it's interesting that none of the three leaders were in office for the last Trilateral Summit in 2019. And I think it's a good sign that they are finally talking, that the trilateral mechanism has been restored despite seemingly irreconcilable geopolitical differences. And it's only if such tensions can be managed will co-prosperity, as you said in the question, will this be possible? It's very interesting to see if the three countries can build on the outcomes from today and see if they can make headway towards their long-stalled trilateral free trade agreement plans.
You mentioned a list of underlying tensions among the three countries, but the joint declaration did contain various ways to boost cooperation among the three countries across a wide spectrum of sectors. And what's also noteworthy from our standing point of view is that it did not include their unified voice on the goal of denuclearizing North Korea, which we'll discuss more as we move on. But before that, Professor Lim, President Yoon and the leaders of Japan and China attended a business summit where the three sides agreed to expand regional trade and investment based on mutual respect and trust. What are some notable agreements made in the economic sector among the three neighbors, and what significance do they hold?
From the joint declaration and from their press conference as well, for me, it was pretty much interesting to hear that all the three leaders emphasized the importance of people-to-people exchange. Which for me, it sounds like, they agree the reality. The reality means, again, we are physically just next door. We're very much close, even though, for example, the United States, US is absolutely one of our biggest trading partner. And not only just trading partner, of course, that is the ally for the Republic of Korea. However, still geographically, the U.S. is apart from this region. However, China, Korea, Japan, these three countries are all just, close to one another. So as long as we are literally just neighbors in the same regions, again, the people-to-people exchanges are very much natural, and it should not be interrupted by unnecessary political tensions. So again, the three leaders all agree that the people-to-people exchanges between one another is pretty much important, which was very much, again, encouraging again to me. And they also, mentioned about the possibility of, accelerating the process of RCEP, more like multilateral trading agreement framework. So RCEP used to be actually RCEP Regional Cooperation Economic Partnership. It used to be somewhat competing with the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, when again the U.S. was more pushing forward with the TPP. But again, now all three leaders were emphasizing the potential of the RCEP, like a multilateral framework, or even the trilateral trading framework between the three countries, Korea, Japan, China. That was also mentioned by the three leaders. So what I'm trying to say is, again, all the three countries are, again, physically very close. And again, the people-to-people exchange is very natural, and economic relationship between one and another is very, very deep and very interconnected. So the three leaders all, I think they agreed on the importance of socio-economic cooperation among the three countries.
So some of the major agreements include expanding three-way FTA as well as RCEP and people-to-people exchanges. But Walter, complicated concerns like North Korea have been excluded from the official agenda, and the North's notice of its satellite launch that came just hours before the trilateral summit was hard to ignore. What's your analysis of the reaction of South Korea, Japan, and China, and what implications do they carry?
Yes, I agree. It's also very important in such trilateral summits to look at what was left unsaid. So, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol were united in condemning the planned North Korea satellite launch, but Chinese Premier Li Qiang stayed silent. And of course, this is significant because there is huge technological overlap between the capabilities needed to launch a satellite into space, as well as those of the development of ballistic missiles, and hence there are larger repercussions for the regional stability as well. Some analysts here in Japan have suggested that this was actually North Korea's way of sending a signal to the three countries that it was closely watching the outcomes of the summit. Also, the statement, whilst it reiterated the call for denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, it is, I believe, actually much weaker than the 2019 declaration that called for the complete denuclearization of the peninsula. Some have suggested that due to the ongoing geopolitical situation that is worsening, Pyongyang actually sees even less of a need to denuclearize now than it had in 2019, given the cards that it currently holds. So what I think has not really been answered is precisely how this goal of denuclearization can be pursued now, especially since Russia, with which China has this no limits partnership, has blocked a UN panel that is monitoring sanctions on North Korea. So I think there are still a lot of questions on the future of the Korean Peninsula.
North Korea issue was excluded from official agenda of the Trilateral Summit in the first place, with South Korean government acknowledging that it's a topic that can't be resolved in one meeting. So expectations weren't high. But as you mentioned, we could clearly see that China is highly unlikely to make one voice when it comes to North Korea issues. And many experts also say that that was exactly what North Korea was aiming for, to drive a wedge among the three countries. And it looks like its tactic was successful. Professor Lim, ahead of the Trilateral Summit, leaders of Korea and China sat down one-on-one and agreed to establish a 2+2 high-level diplomatic and security dialogue. What role do you expect it to play amid continuing North Korea provocations and escalating division among like-minded nations in the region?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, many people see the current situation with the word of so-called the new Cold War. Even though I personally don't, like the term, but still, many people see today's word like that way. Especially ever since the Russia invaded the Ukraine, and the war in Ukraine is still going on. Again, all this so-called how would you say, common sense or common rules, international rules, were already violated because, Russia, if you think about Russia's position in the United Nations, as one of the P5 member, again, permanent five, which is, again, one of the founding members of the mechanism of the international organizations, again, the i.e. United Nations. However, Russia, regardless of course, they might have their own reasons to do that, but obviously they violated, again, the spirit of the UN Charter, which is, again, not sensical. Again, as one of the founding members of the UN and as one of the permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council, again, it violated the spirit, which is a very, very big thing, again, in the post-World War II history. So having said that, now more like a kind of common senses, common rules are very much vulnerable to those kind of, again, the violation. But I do think, again, the China, certainly they don't want to be, like the Russia. I think China has its own pretty high standard to be a kind of leading country in the international society. So, these 2+2 meetings are like a mechanism through those kind of things. Again, China, I do think and I do expect, again, that China can contribute to stability of the region because, again, China is also a very responsible player in the regional peace and the regional security, regional stability, not only regional and the global too. 2+2 meeting, again, which is a very rare mechanism, even for Korea-like country. Again, Korea does have that mechanism with the U.S. and with Australia. And this is, again, the very rare mechanism, and we agreed with China too. So from now on, through that mechanism, I'd love to see more constructive dialogue, constructive behavior, cooperations between the two countries.
And this one's also for you, Professor Lim. Korea and China also agreed to resume their second phase free trade agreement negotiations. What are your prospects for the talks and the economic benefits it'll bring?
Sure. Again, China is the greatest trading partner for Korea, but not only just all these products or the key raw materials. Now we are trying to talk more seriously about service sector as well. I think that is pretty meaningful too. For example, Korean culture, Korean movie like cultural products. As far as I know, Chinese young generations, they do have a lot of interest, and some of them are really fan of the Korean culture. And if the trade of those cultural products can be more freer than now, and if so, definitely those people-to-people exchange can be boosted further through those broadened trade, even for those kind of invisible but very important soft power related items as well. So of course we might have some concerns as well, or we might have more like a competing aspects in service sector as well. However, again, as long as free trade and together with the pretty well set up rules working on, if so, I think ultimately it can contribute to the future of the two countries' economy and then societies as well.
Leaders of Korea and China, they agreed to boost cultural exchanges, as you've pointed out, and hopes are high that it may ease China's K-culture ban still in place across various realms in China. So hopefully we'll see more exchanges in the cultural sector between Korea and China. And Walter, the thorny issue of the Naver-line Yahoo feud was also brought to the table, albeit briefly, during one-on-one talks between President Yoon and Prime Minister Kishida. The two leaders saw eye to eye that the Japanese government is not pressuring Naver to sell its stakes, but rather urging the company to strengthen security governance. In your view, how would the issue impact future Seoul-Tokyo relations?
Well, I do see it as a huge positive that Prime Minister Kishida and President Yoon could agree on the way forward for the disagreement on Naval and Line Yahoo. But I also do see this spat as a sign that Japan-South Korea relations actually remain quite fragile despite the ongoing warmer ties and the leaders having built up a relationship of trust over what I believe is 10 face-to-face meetings. It really is up to them to properly manage these relations. Noticeably, I understand that the South Korean opposition has pounced on the issue to stoke, well, perhaps to stoke anti-Japan sentiment, but the view from Japan is that such an administrative guidance is, well, kind of a necessary political maneuver, if I may use this term, given the importance that Japanese voters and Japanese citizens place on their personal privacy. Of course, I must note that there are so many other domestic security failings and security breaches in this respect, but South Korea's ownership of a stake in what is Japan's most popular messaging application kind of makes it easier for Japan to seek to cast the blame elsewhere, I think. we must not forget that, of course, SoftBank also has a stake in line, and I think Japan should also see how it can beef up its own security as well.
Well, the two leaders were also on the same page that the issue is distinct from broader Seoul-Tokyo relations, so we'll see how things play out from this point on. Professor Lim, the three countries agreed to hold trilateral summits on a regular basis. Before you go, tell us about the remaining challenges among the three Asian neighbors that call for extra attention to keep up the momentum for the three-way dialogue.
Well, trilateral dialogue among the three countries, historically too, it has been more focusing on the economic cooperation rather than the security-related issues. So in that sense, today's the result was pretty much coherent with the past experiences. However, if we think about all this North Korea-related challenges or cross-strait issues or some territorial disputes between China and Japan, for example, again, we have some potential flashpoints among one and another. However, again, as long as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, as long as, again, all the three countries are physically so close, and naturally people, they are just move across the border, again, this is more important reality, I think. So we definitely, the three countries should deal with those very much sensitive issues cautiously, which is what I, again, expect from now on too.
Well, the Chinese media have also highlighted the significance of the resumption of the three-way dialogue, expressing hopes that it'll serve as a stepping stone for boosted cooperation and thaw soured relations. So although challenges remain, it looks like the three neighbors can now work together toward a new chapter. Thank you so much, Professor Lim and Walter, for sharing your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow to join our conversation. Goodbye for now.